Hey folks, welcome. My name is Emily and this is Gently Chaotic Knits, which is usually just a video podcast series about what I am making. So most of the time that's knitting, but sometimes spinning, crochet, uh, a little bit of sewing occasionally. It's been a minute since I've done a regular project update video, and this is not that. I promise I will do another one of those soon, but it is just the beginning of 2024. Today's January 4th, and I really wanted to sit down and talk a little bit about just kind of my reflections from 2023 and my goals for 2024. This is something that I've done the last several years that I do often for my making, like for my knitting specifically, but also just like generally. Um, I would say I'm a like pretty reflective person in general, and so I often will be checking in um, and reflecting on like how things have gone and setting new goals and stuff like that. But uh, I feel like I love a good excuse to do that even more so. So I'm happy to have the like the excuse of the new year as a reason to focus in and like double check on my goals and reflect on how the last year went and kind of set my intention for the next year. So this was kind of a wild year, and so I don't know, everything feels a little bit more like loosey-goosey than it normally does for me, but I think it'll still be fun to check in and yeah, and set goals for the future. But one thing I also kind of wanted to do here as well is I I guess, okay, I'm the type of person that when I find a new like knitting podcaster that I really like, I almost always go back to the very beginning of their videos and watch from the beginning because I don't like the feeling of missing something. Like if I enjoy their videos, then I want to watch them all. And I also just like to have that history and context of like everything that I don't know. Maybe this is weird of me, but I just like to watch from the beginning because I like to have everything, like all of the information. And I don't think that everyone does that. I think a lot of people, like if they find a new like podcaster that they really like, they'll just start watching their videos from wherever they started watching. So I realized that a lot of you that may be newer to my channel probably don't actually know anything about me, which is fine, and I'm happy to just talk about what I'm making, and that can be that. But I thought that maybe this type of video, like starting a new year, would be a good opportunity, and maybe I can make a habit of this, like each year when I do my reflections and my goals, I can just do like a little tiny intro about myself so that if you're new and you want to know about me, then I'll tell you about me. And also it gives you an opportunity if you're new to decide if you want to keep watching or whatever. So anyway, I thought I would just do like a quick little intro. It's not going to be long. I'll get to the other stuff quickly, but like I said, my name is Emily. I grew up in Norman, Oklahoma. That's actually where I am physically right now. Although those of you that have watched my more recent videos may notice that like my background and angle is a little different. I'm trying a little bit of a different setup because I think the light might be better this way. So we'll see how this goes. But anyway, I grew up in Norman, Oklahoma, and I got my bachelor's degree in math from the University of Oklahoma. After that, I moved to Seattle, and I went straight into my master's degree, which I got at the University of Washington in Seattle, in applied math. And shortly after that, I had like what is probably the most chaotic and hectic and exciting and amazing week of, or like 2 weeks of my life. I like finished my master's, graduated with my master's degree. My whole family came up to like see my graduation. I mean, not just for the graduation, but also because a few days after that I got married, and I married my husband Nafis, who I have been with since we were both in high school. And so we got married, which is probably the best thing ever in my life. But after that, we went on like a little kind of mini honeymoon trip. We took a road trip to Olympic National Park in Seattle, in Washington, and then I started a new job like a week later, and I worked as an analyst for the Seattle Mariners. So you may not necessarily know what that means. First, the Seattle Mariners are a Major League Baseball team. If you've ever seen the movie or like read the book Moneyball, that's probably like the closest kind of generalization I can give you for the kind of work that I did there. But basically the idea is that I was using kind of math and like statistics and a lot of kind of computer science and like coding type work to try and improve the Seattle Mariners in like a variety of different ways. I worked on several different projects during my time there and kind of worked actually in a couple of different like sub-departments of the analytics team. And I was there for about 4 years. It was during this time that I actually started my podcast on YouTube, which I started, I can't believe this, I was actually thinking about this morning before I came to record this. I started this video podcast series in September of 2020. So amidst like the pandemic, I was still working for the Mariners at that time. So it's been over 3 years since I've been recording these videos, which I honestly cannot believe. It doesn't feel like it's been that long at all. But I mean, on the other hand, it feels like it's been forever. So anyway, that's also around the same time that I started writing and publishing knitwear patterns. So my first pattern I published was that, I guess it was in 2021. And it was the stripy turtle tank was my first ever pattern that I released. And then the following year is when I left my job at the Mariners and I started working part-time at La Mercerie, which is a yarn store in on Bainbridge Island near Seattle. And I also, I was part-time there, and then I was part-time working on producing this podcast, but also writing and publishing knitwear patterns. And so it was really 2022 was when I published my most patterns. I did, I think 4 patterns that year. Sorry, my brother just walked through. I think I did 4 patterns, published 4 patterns in 2022. And then in 2023, which is this most recent year, the first half of the year I spent at La Mercerie and also working on knitwear patterns. I published 1 pattern this last year. And then I was also, along with working at La Mercerie, I was helping to organize Flock Fiber Festival, which happened this year, which was exciting and huge and was amazing to be a part of. And then shortly after that, my husband and I decided to make a big change in our lives. We ended up actually kind of putting our lives to the side for a period of time to travel pretty much full time. So that's why we're back in Oklahoma now. That's where our families are. And we are kind of hanging out here in between trips. So we have already been traveling since September of last year. So we've been traveling for a few months now. We've already gone to some really incredible places and had a really great time. We are planning to travel for another like 4 or 5 months. And then we will figure out what comes next, settle back into like some sort of routine somewhere, but we're not quite sure what that's gonna look like. So anyway, that is just a little bit about me. If y'all remember, I was gonna mention this as well. This podcast used to be called 108 Stitches during my kind of baseball era. I still am like a huge baseball fan. I grew up a huge baseball fan. And that's like why I wanted to work for the Mariners and be an analyst. That was kind of my dream for a really long time, and I'm so glad that I got to do that. At the beginning of my podcast days, I did spend a lot more time talking about, I would try to put like a little bit of baseball chat at the end of each of my videos. and I have kind of left that behind, but still have like a great love for baseball. So if you have any interest in baseball, definitely, I'm always happy to chat about it. But just don't like really do it as much in the videos anymore. So anyway, that's me. If you have like other questions for me, or like there's stuff that you wanted to know. Oh, I guess I should say when I started knitting. I started knitting when I was in high school. Really weird story. Actually, a friend of mine, I guess someone came to her Spanish class in high school and taught them how to knit. I was not even in that class, but at lunchtime she had her like needles and yarn, and I was like, what is that? I want to know what is going on. And so she like taught me at lunch, and that night I went and I got some like needles and yarn from Walmart, and I was like hooked since then. My first ever project was this like horrible bright orange scarf that I knit for my boyfriend, now my husband. And I really loved it. I went straight in. I'd been knitting for I think less than a year, and I started working at the local yarn store in like in my city. When I was in college, I just worked there part-time, and I think that really helped my love of knitting grow. But I think at this stage I had like another big push into becoming like sometimes people say like a knitter with a capital K. I think I became like a person that knits every single day without fail in 2020, partially because like the time in the pandemic, but also because I started shortly before the pandemic. I started knitting and like went to a knit group with some of my friends. Luckily I made a few knitting friends in Seattle, and I think that really pushed me into like knitting all the time, every day, it being like such a huge part of my life. And now I think that like the community and relating to people and knitting along with other people is such a huge part of the experience for me. So I don't know, I feel like that's a lot of what keeps me like really into this craft and this hobby and everything, is just like being part of the community and getting to knit along with other people. So that, I guess, is just a little bit of an intro about me. I'm sure there's more to say, like you can't sum up a person in like 5 minutes, but that's what I have for now. So if you have other questions, let me know. And now let's talk about reflections and goals. I don't think this is going to take super long, like maybe 20 minutes to get through, but I just wanted to talk about, I think I was a little bit more casual with my goals for 2023, and maybe that is like my word for 2023 was just like casual. I don't know. I feel like I took a step back and was just a little bit less intense, I guess, about my knitting this year. So I just wanted to go through like what my goals were for 2023 that I had set. And I can link the video above where I talked about these goals if you want to go, and you can like audit me and see like, are these really the goals that you said you had? Because I didn't go back and watch that video. I just had them written down in my notebook. So hopefully this is accurate. My first goal was to knit for joy and put less pressure on myself generally. And I 100% think that I did that. I really do. That's kind of feels like a very like thinky, like nebulous thing. Like, what does knitting for joy mean? But I think that if you've watched my videos previously, you know that I often have a tendency to like be really intense about my knitting and my making, and I have like a lot of goals for myself that I love goal setting. I'm literally doing it right now in this video, but I would set like deadlines and goals that were like maybe a little bit aggressive and intense, and I would really like beat myself up if I didn't meet them. So I didn't really do this last year, but several years before that, I was setting goals for like how many garments I wanted to knit in the year, how many pairs of socks, and like there's absolutely nothing against that, and I think that there's a good chance that I'll go back to kind of that in the future. And I also like, even though I'm not going to put it in the video, I probably have in my head like, I'd like to knit this many garments this year, or I'd like to knit this many pairs of socks. Like there's something about that I feel like is just in my nature that I can't get away from. But I think I wanted to be more purposeful and like, don't knit the thing that I feel like I should be knitting, knit the thing that I really want to be knitting. You know what I mean? Like, follow the knitting that is actually bringing me joy and making me feel excited. And I actually really think that I did that in 2023. I think I really followed knitting the thing that I was most excited about, and I think it resulted in a year full of garments that I really love and other like projects that I really love. So I guess I also forgot to say what I'm wearing. I'm wearing the Strata vest by Jacqueline Cieslak that I knit in Explorer Knits and Fibers, Denali sock, Pike Place. If you want to know about this garment and also all the other garments that I knit this year, I made a video about that. It's already up. I'll also link this up here and like below in the description box. But yeah, I really leaned in knitting garments. So I guess I can give you a couple of like just overall stats about my knitting this year. I was gonna do this before I got into the goals, but I'm a little bit all over the place. I mean, it is called Gently Chaotic Knits by like, so I'm, no one's surprised by that. So I believe, because I didn't track things super well this year, I believe I knit 26 projects this year. I'm not 100% sure, but that's all the ones that I had in my Ravelry and other ones that I could think of that I knit this year. 16 garments. So again, I have a video just about the garments that I knit. So you can go watch that video if you want more information about that. So definitely mostly garments. I feel like I've really developed or like settled into being a garment knitter, and primarily those are the things that I want to knit. Those are the things that I want to wear. So mostly garments. I knit 4 pairs of socks this year. One of them was for my husband, and then I have several of the others I knit, or maybe just one of the others I knit mostly in 2022 actually, but I finished it this year. So not a ton of socks for me this year. I knit 3 hats, 1 shawl, 1 pair of mittens, and 1 little like plushie stuffed animal. So that's kind of overall the projects that I knit. The other thing that I kind of wanted to go through as well, which I don't know, I guess maybe this is a good time to do that, is the yarns that I used the most this year. I found this really interesting. When I was recording the garments video, I realized that I kept saying Durarum Natura, like that just kept coming up because I feel like I use their yarns all the time in like a lot of projects. And so I went through and I actually tallied up not necessarily specific yarns, but like of yarn brands, what I used the most in 2023. So I have that I knit 5 projects with Durarum Natura yarns. So that was definitely number 1. 3 of those I used Durarum Natura Gilead, and 2 I used Euless. So part of that is because I knit 4 sweaters for my family members, but 3 of them I knit using Durarum Natura Gilead. So I used lots of Durarum Natura. Love that yarn, huge, their yarns generally. I guess I used 2 different yarns of theirs. I had 4 projects with La Bien-Aimée yarns. And then I just had a whole bunch that I had 2 of. I had 2 projects with Grenouille. If you guys have watched the podcast for a while, you know she, like Steph, her yarn is amazing and it's like my favorite. She's like probably my favorite yarn dyer. I love her yarns. I knit 2 projects with Explorer Knits and Fibers. This is one of them. I knit for the first time with Spin Cycle yarns this year, and I knit 2 projects with Spin Cycle yarns. I knit 2 projects with Ovis Etc. yarns, and I also knit, 2 projects with Handspun yarn. So that kind of goes into one of my reflections for 2023 generally as well, which is that I started spinning this year, which is huge. Like I was really nervous to start spinning because I thought that it would take a lot of time away from my knitting, that I would become obsessed with it and it would take a lot of time away from my knitting. And so I kept putting it off and kept putting it off, but I'd always really wanted to. And then honestly, I got heavily influenced by my friend Maya, who had started spinning the year before and was just making these like really incredible, beautiful yarns. And I was like, I have to do this. I have to try. And so I started spinning this year. I bought a wheel this year, and I will say, yeah, honestly, it did take some time away from my knitting probably, but I had this realization that like that is okay. I don't know, like it's not like I owe a certain amount of time or a certain amount of myself to knitting. Like it's okay if I find something else that I love and I split time. Like as long as I'm enjoying myself and I'm happy. I feel like, I don't know, I guess maybe that goes hand in hand with this whole like knitting for joy concept and like being a lot more casual about my making. I feel like I gave myself the space to start spinning because I was a lot less intense and more kind of casual about my knitting this year. So yeah, I guess back to kind of what my 2023 goals were and how I did with them. So one was knitting for joy and putting less pressure on myself. Number two was continuing to like improve in my photo taking and posting on Ravelry and Instagram and stuff, but also my logging and tracking. This one I would say I don't think outright was like a success. I think that I did do a pretty good job of my photo taking, and I also think I improved in like my photo editing and stuff and posting on Instagram and Ravelry and stuff, but my logging and tracking I think took a step back this year. And I also think that kind of goes hand in hand with the being less intense about my knitting and being more casual about it. In 2022, I actually fully tracked my yardage for all of my garment knits, but I think also for my other knits as well. So I had a full catalog of, I had a full catalog of literally the yardage that I knit that year. I did not do that this year. I did not even do a great job of putting all my projects in Ravelry, and if I did put them in Ravelry, I didn't put all the information in there, and like sometimes I didn't have photos for a while. Like I tried to go actually a couple days and update that, but it was not great. Yeah, I think it was hard for me because like this year was a lot more chaotic and we started traveling and we were like preparing for travel and I had like a lot to do at work and that kind of stuff for different time periods. It was just, I didn't do a great job of that, but that's okay. My third goal for 2023 was to learn new things. I would say I definitely did that because I started spinning this year. I don't know that I necessarily had that specifically in mind. Maybe I did. Y'all can watch the video from last year and see if that is what I had in mind specifically. When I was looking at my notes, I didn't have anything in there specifically that I wanted to learn. But as far as like knitting techniques goes, I guess I have a couple things. Like I learned how to cable without a cable needle. Also, I don't know if this really counts as learning, but I slightly changed the way that I tension my yarn so that I can have more success like meeting gauge and liking the fabric that I make. So I guess it's not really learning, but that is like an adjustment that I made this year that I'm really happy with. But yeah, big one is that I learned how to spin, and I probably have like a couple other smaller things that I learned to do this year as well. I feel like I don't have learning new things on my list of goals for 2024, but just because I feel like I don't have specific like knitting techniques in mind that I want to learn. The only one exception to that is I do want to steek at some point. That I kind of had in my mind I wanted to do this year, and then it just didn't happen. So maybe with that exception, but otherwise I don't have like specific techniques in mind. I feel like my mindset as a person is just that I always want to be learning new things. And so like I don't really think I need to list that as a goal for myself as much as just like that's kind of inherently a part of my mindset. So I'm comfortable with like leaving it off of my explicit goals. Like I don't think I need to remind myself to do that. I'm generally just like a pretty curious person, so I think I will learn new things because like I'm curious about things and I want to learn about them. So, but that definitely is true. I think I want to grow in my spinning for sure this year. And I don't have a ton of like spinning specific goals, but there are tons of things that I want to learn and try and do with spinning. So I'll talk about that in a little bit as well. And then my fourth goal for 2023, this one is like kind of a weird one to explain and also talk about, but I did have kind of like a stash goal for 2023. I wanted to, as far as sweater quantities go, I wanted to only purchase a sweater quantity after I had knit 2 sweater quantities from stash. And the idea was that hopefully I would bring in less yarn than I knit in 2023. And I think that technically I met that goal. However, I don't think I actually reduced the size of my stash. And here's why. I was looking back, and as part of my kind of reflections and goals video last year, I went through all the sweaters quantities that I had in stash, and I honestly like did not knit that many of them. Like, I really didn't. So I think a big reason for that is that 4 of the sweaters that I knit this year were gift knits that I knit for family members. And I had to purchase the yarn for that, like for each of those sweaters. And so it wasn't from my stash. However, I did count those sweaters toward my like 2 out, 1 in goal. So like if I knit a sweater for one of my family members, even if it wasn't from stash, I still counted that as a sweater that I could use for like, okay, once I knit 2, I can get a sweater quantity. And so I think I bought maybe like 4 or 5 sweater quantities of yarn, and I knit 16 garments or like 9 full sleeve sweaters. So I think I was roughly on pace, but 4 of the sweaters were not from my stash. So I don't know, like, I think that technically I followed my own rules, but I don't think I really followed the spirit of the rules or like the spirit of the goal, if that makes sense. Like the hope was that I would reduce my stash, and I didn't really reduce my stash that much. So I have ideas about like how to do that differently this year, and I'll talk about that in a second, but I would say that one was more like a meh, and not really like that I met that goal. So as far as 2024 goals go, I'm gonna continue trying to knit and spin for joy. I think that I can continue to do that and also add in back some of the other stuff. I feel like 2023 was almost like an overcorrection. Not that it's ever a bad thing to be like more casual and less intense and like knit more for joy, but I feel like there's some other stuff that I enjoyed about tracking and that kind of stuff that I want to bring back, but I also don't want to lose this whole like knitting for joy idea. So I'm not going to set any number goals for myself, but I am going to try to track what I do knit, because I am a person that just likes to have that kind of data, and I like to track things. So I want to bring that back, but I do want to still continue like knitting things that I love. I just want to have accurate information about what it is that I knit, I guess. So goal 1 is to continue to knit and spin for joy. Then I also have on here that I want to actually log and track things consistently. So I do want to try to do yardage tracking again this year. I want to put my gauge and my finished garment measurements in Ravelry, like in my project pages. And I also got a project notebook this last year that I want to utilize this year as well. I think that I really like to write things down physically, so I'm hoping that if I use it's called like the Making Notebook it's by Making, or the Maker's Notebook, I think, by Making Treasures. It's beautiful. If you go back and watch my flock video, I got this at Flock Fiber Festival, and I show some of the pages there and what it looks like. You should definitely go take a look at it because it's really beautiful. But I really want to start using that. I think that'll help me, and track like my spins as well. I don't really have a good way that I've been tracking my my hand spun projects, so I want to figure out a way to do that as well. So I think just getting back into my logging and tracking game is going to be important to me. Unfortunately, I think it's a little bit harder when I'm traveling. Like I just don't do as good of a job of that, but I'm hoping that I still can get back into it a little bit, at least a little bit. I'm hoping for improvement. Like it doesn't have to be perfect, but I am hoping for improvement. Another goal that I have for 2024 is not just to continue like taking photos and posting them and stuff of my finished knits, because I love having the photos and I think I did a much better job in 2023, but I also do want to kind of improve in my photography skills and my photo editing skills. I think that I've kind of almost like plateaued a little bit. I think I've gotten into a rhythm of like photo taking and editing that I like, which I'm really happy with, but I think that there's more opportunity for improvement there. So I'm hoping to actually take a couple of online courses for photography and see if I can take even better pictures and just produce better photos of my projects. And I also think like this isn't a knitting related thing, but if I'm going to be traveling a lot too, I want to be able to take beautiful pictures of my travels and stuff as well. So just generally improving my photography skills is also a goal of mine for this year. Okay, I don't have a ton of specific spinning goals. I do want to learn like different drafting methods, and I do want to just like explore a lot, figure out more if I can track better like stats about my handspun and everything as well. But one specific goal that I have is I want to spin a sweater quantity of yarn this year, and hand in hand with that, I want to knit a sweater this year with handspun yarn. Now, this is going to be tricky again, like, because I am going to be traveling mostly for the first half of the year, so I probably won't get to spinning a sweater quantity of yarn until like the latter half of the year, and then I'll also have to knit the sweater, but I think I can do it. I have 2 at least sweater quantities of fiber in my stash, and I'm really excited about both of them, so I would really love if I could spin up one of them and knit that sweater this year. At the end of 2024, I want to have a hand spun sweater. I really, really do. I think that's just like a huge kind of dream of mine, like goal that I have in my head that I really, really want. So that I wanted to write down as like part of my goals for 2024. And then my 5th and final goal for 2024 is like a stash goal, or like a yarn acquisitions goal. And I think that this came to mind after I went to New York Sheep and Wool Festival and like Rhinebeck this year. I think I don't want to say like a freak out, but I just had this moment of like, I don't want to say, I don't know. I don't even know how to describe it. I feel like I talked about it a little bit in my post Rhinebeck video, but I basically just had a moment of like, I am acquiring yarn at a pace that I cannot keep up with. Like I can't knit it at this pace. And now I'm also spinning yarn, so I'm producing yarn in another way. And of course, all the yarn that I purchase, I love and it's beautiful, but like it being beautiful is not enough of a reason for me to buy it, because also I have beautiful yarn already that I'm not knitting. Like if I buy yarn, I'm just adding that to the pool of yarn that I have that I love, and I can't knit with all of it. And then like I'm not able to knit with yarn that I own and that I love because I am buying too much of it. I don't know if that makes sense. It's just like, I just had this feeling of like almost I'm drowning in it. Like I have too much and I can't keep up, and it makes me sad to have this yarn that I own, that I love, that I want to make with, that I can't because I just have too much of it and I can't. So I think that I'm not going to say like I'm not going to buy any yarn this year, because I don't think I can stick to that. And I think setting goals that you know you're not going to keep, at least for me, is dangerous, because that can be like really disheartening to me, and I don't want to be unhappy and disappointed. What I do think that I can at least come close to holding myself to is, with the exception of buying yarn on my travels, because when I travel, I'm going to allow myself to buy yarn because I never know if I'll be there again. I love to have yarn as kind of like a memento, or like just like a piece of that trip. I like to have yarn from places that I've gone, and then I can knit with it, and then I can have a project that reminds me of that place. So I'm going to still buy yarn as I would normally on my trips, like on travel. But with that exception, I want to only buy yarn and fiber if I'm going to immediately cast it on or start spinning it. So that means that like if I have yarn in my stash that I need another yarn to pair with, and I like want to start that project, I can buy yarn to pair with that yarn that I already have and start that project, but I can only buy it like right before I'm going to start the project. Or if a new pattern comes out that I'm in love with and I don't have a good match for it in my stash, I can buy yarn if I'm going to cast on the pattern right away. Otherwise, no buying yarn with projects in mind that I'm not going to knit right away, or buying yarn without projects in mind. And I think that's really going to help me reduce the amount of yarn that I have in my stash. I think I'll still buy yarn, but I think I'm going to get through a lot more. And I think that it's going to be helpful for me to just like kind of think about more like I'm getting to knit with the yarn that I already have, that I know that I love and that I already own, rather than continuing to like dilute that yarn in my yarn stash. I don't know if that makes sense, but I don't know. I think this is going to hopefully work for me. I'm hopeful. So that means that I'm pretty much eliminating doing like yarn pre-orders. I'm hopefully not gonna do pretty much any of in 2024. And like I may reconsider in 2025. Like if I do a year of this and I hate it, then I may reconsider. I mean, I of course like reserve the right to reconsider at any point. So like if I get through part of the year and I'm like, I hate this and I'm sad, then I'll reconsider. Like that's fine. But I really think that I would be happier if I could knit more through the yarn that I already own. Because I have some really beautiful yarn that I really want to make things with and that I'm really excited about. And I have projects picked out and everything, and it's just hanging out, waiting for me. So yeah, I think that's my last like stated goal that I have for 2024. I want to, of course, continue knitting along with friends. That's huge, but again, not really something that I need to write down. I have some other thoughts about my making as well, not knitting specifically, but a couple years ago I made a goal that I wanted to like weave a blanket and like sew a quilt. And I still have those things in the back of my mind. It's tough because those are much more product makes for me. Like I want to have a blanket that I've made, but I don't know that I actually want to make it. So we'll see. Maybe 2024 will be the year of the blanket. I'll make some kind of blanket this year, but maybe not, and that's okay. So I'm not going to write it down because I don't think it's like a really big focused goal that I have for this year. But yeah, that's kind of where my head's at. That's kind of what I'm thinking about. So overall, I would say 2023 was a great year of making. I started spinning. I knit a lot more casually and a lot more for joy. And I'm really happy with all the things that I made. So I feel good about it for that reason. But I also think that there are things that I could do this year that will make me enjoy my making even more. And I love that I have the ability to change that if like I can recognize, okay, this is what went well and didn't go well last year or the year before, whatever, and I can continue to learn and grow in that, and I can make adjustments that I want to make so that I'm always, I don't know, I'm always reflecting, I'm always thinking about that, I'm always trying to make things better and more enjoyable for myself. So yeah, those are kind of my reflections. That's all I really wanted to share. I promise I will do a project update video not that soon, actually. I'm about to go out of town today. So I'll be gone for I think like a week and a half or so, and then I'll be back and I promise I'll record a project update video at that point. If you want to know one project that I finished, you can go watch my garments video because I did finish a sweater since my last project update video, and it is in that video. So, but other projects and stuff I will definitely talk about once I am back from, we're going actually to New Orleans, and then I'm going to Arkansas for a quick little trip as well. So after that, I will hop on here and record a project update video, but hopefully this was fun, and if you have any reflections or goals that you are thinking about that you want to share with me, I always love to hear that, and I just am, I think, a person that loves to reflect. So any reflecting that you want to do, I'm happy to chat about it and drop a comment or message me or whatever. And I think that's all I have. So thanks a ton for watching. I hope you do lots of knitting and watch lots of baseball. I guess baseball winter league, or don't watch baseball, but just enjoy your making, and I will talk to you soon.